Welcome to the Hope Frequency, a space where faith meets mental health. I'm Rini Jacob, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're navigating a season of struggle or wondering if faith and therapy can walk hand in hand, this show is for you. Let's tune in together. On today's episode, we're going to look at what God thinks of therapy, whether it's okay for Christians to go to therapy, as well as biblical examples of seeking help in the Bible. Now, let's be honest. Many believers don't talk about mental health struggles because they think it's spiritual failure. And so it really does beg the question, does God approve of therapy? Even before we can address this question, I think we need to acknowledge how difficult it is for Christians even to admit that they're struggling with something, be it depression, doubt, or hopelessness, simply because of the fear of judgment and the stigma that's attached. The Bible is the best source to go back to. And we see that several men and women of the Bible, be it Jeremiah, Elijah, or David, struggle with disappointment, failure, and even depression. Also, we don't see scripture rejecting therapy or counseling. In fact, the notion of therapy itself is deeply rooted in biblical principles. We see countless examples of people seeking counsel and having healing conversations that have led to breakthroughs. From King David to Moses, all the way to the apostles, each acknowledged the need for wisdom and guidance, a shift in perspective, and counsel on how to move forward. Another point to note is that the Bible emphasizes the importance of community. We read in Galatians 6:2, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. And this leads us into the next big question. Is it okay for Christians to go to therapy? And so let's take a closer look at scripture for examples of this. Throughout the Bible, we see people of deep faith seeking help. Moses had Aaron. David had prophets, musicians, and counselors. Elijah, after a mental and emotional breakdown, was met by an angel, given food, and told to rest, after which God gently met him and comforted him. Even Jesus, in his humanity, surrounded himself with community. He wept, he withdrew to rest, and he asked the hard questions. Seeking professional help isn't a lack of faith. Struggling with your mental health is not linked to a lack of trust in God, not reading the word enough, or even a sign of spiritual weakness. It is not a reflection of the relationship you have with God. In fact, seeking help allows us to acknowledge our need for support and only leads to deeper dependence on Him. It means you're stewarding your mind and heart the same way you steward your physical health. Therapy is a tool, just like medicine, mentorship, or prayer. It doesn't replace God. In fact, it reflects His heart for wholeness. Inviting God into the experience and dealing with our vulnerabilities. Instead of telling ourselves, oh, this will just pass, don't worry, these things go away over time, just pray about it, is not going to change anything. In fact, it is an act of dependence on God, not spiritual weakness. It takes real courage to say, I need support, and even more to seek therapy. God calls each of us to exercise wisdom and to seek counsel. Even as we serve an all powerful God who heals, we need to acknowledge that in seeking help, we are exercising faith. And so, why not just secular therapy? Secular therapy has its value. I use those tools every day. But when it comes to clients who are believers, healing feels incomplete without Jesus at the center of the journey. Secular models encourage self reliance, whereas faith based therapy anchors healing in our relationship with Christ and community. The process has so much more meaning. Therapy tools paired with scripture actually accelerate healing as the therapy room fills with God's presence and grace. There's a phrase I often like to use: Jesus completes the circle. Therapy is made whole and complete when we invite Jesus into the process. I'd like to share something from my experience here. I was working with a client addressing anxious thoughts and low self worth. For a client feeling overwhelmed and burdened, being asked to rely on themselves and find their worth would actually leave them feeling even more helpless. And so I prayed about it and asked the client if we could look at this through the lens of faith. Together, we reflected on the verse from Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We also looked at Isaiah 43:4. Since you are precious and honored in my sight, and because I love you, I will give people in exchange for you, nations in exchange for your life. The client is able to recognize and accept that their worth is not based on what they do, how successful or smart or capable they are, but in who they belong to and whose they are, a child of God. Scripture fits into the therapy room like a beautiful puzzle piece that completes the picture. I cannot tell you how many clients I've personally witnessed benefit from a faith based perspective that not only brings clarity and conviction, but hope as they're navigating through all of their struggles and their hurt. It is where faith meets mental health that healing begins. And so, just to quickly recap, today we talked about how God views therapy. We looked at different stories of personal struggles in the Bible, as well as the self reliance versus Christ centered approach. If you've ever felt torn between faith and mental health, or wondered if Jesus and therapy can coexist, then this space is for you. Welcome to the Hope Frequency. If this resonated with you, do share this episode with a friend or leave a review. I'd love to hear your thoughts.